who will be the next Conor McGregor. So we got a little bit of criteria here, okay? Because McGregor matched all of these criteria. And I think to get on his level, you also need to match all of them. So is the fighter winning fights? Casual fans who you need to become a big star aren't really going to be backing someone who is winning one fight and losing the next. They want to see someone win their fights. They don't want to be disappointed watching their favorite fighter lose every time, or guess what, that person's no longer going to be their favorite fighter. And of course, the fighter also has to be exciting in the cage. The whole point is it's fighting. If you're a boring fighter, no one's going to want to watch you fight. Looking at you, Bilal Muhammad, does the fighter actually have a big personality? And specifically, are they a good trash talker? Because people just don't really resonate to the good guys in the same way that they do to the bad guys, essentially. And lastly, does the fighter have obvious Dana White privilege? It's, of course, to be a big star, yeah, you need the casual fans, but if you have obvious Dana White privilege, casual fans don't care about that, but hardcore fans will, and you do still need that hardcore fan backing to really get you to be pushed into the casual eye. So we're going to go through a list of stars from the least to most star power, but overall I think these are still the biggest stars in the UFC right now, at least those who aren't on the verge of retirement. Someone like Jon Jones we're not going to be talking about here since I think he's too close to retirement, even though he is definitely one of the biggest stars, if not the biggest current star in the sport, who is still at least somewhat active, unlike Conor right now. And we're just going to see, do they match these criteria, because you're going to need these to be the next Conor. First up, Alexander Volkanovski. He's winning his fights. He's the second greatest featherweight of all time. He has entertaining fights. Makhachev, Volkanovski 1 is absolutely a Fight of the Year 2023 candidate. Though, to be fair, I don't think it's necessarily a Fight of the Year that appeals as much to more casual fans, because it's more about the display of skill and technicality you saw in this, compared to some crazy finish that maybe is a little bit more appealing to casual fans. But either way, still overall pretty entertaining fights from Volk. Stand up for yourself. Volk, here's his issue. He's just too much of a good guy. He does give legitimately nice, inspirational speeches in the octagon, and he's good on the mic. He's a confident speaker, but he doesn't trash talk. He doesn't call people out, and so it really doesn't propel him to that next level. And he obviously has hardcore fan backing since he doesn't have a bunch of obvious Dana White privilege or anything like that. Next up, we got the Black Beast himself, Derrick Lewis. Of course, he's got super exciting knockouts. To be fair, if the fight goes past the second round, chances are it's going to be an absolute snooze fest, whether that's his fight with Francis Ngannou or more recently his fight with Jailton Almeida. But nonetheless, overall, when you watch a Derrick Lewis fight, you're generally going to see an exciting knockout. And of course, that appeals to both casual and hardcore fans alike. And his balls was hot. Everybody loves Derrick Lewis and his hot-ass balls. And also, no obvious Dana White privilege, so hardcore fans also back him. But here's the issue. He is 2-5 in his last 7. Casual fans are simply not going to back someone who isn't winning. They are okay with a loss. For example, Conor still lost to Khabib. But they generally want to see you winning more often than you're losing. And 2-5 in your last 7, you're losing a lot more than you're winning. So I think that really prevents Derrick from getting to that next level. And at this point, it's probably too late to turn it around because he is getting quite old. Now, Sean Strickland, underrated record. He's actually not lost very many fights for, the amount of people that like to call him an apex bum or whatever. His losses, it's a narrow loss to Jared Cannonier, a loss to Alex Pereira, a loss to Kamaru Usman. These are all top level fighters, okay? Here's where he gets hurt. He's simply not that exciting of a fighter. He's gonna just hit you with 1-2s and walk you down for 25 minutes. So, on paper, he's an entertaining fighter because you'll look, wow, he threw a ton of strikes. He must be super entertaining. When he's throwing a whole ton of strikes, it's not because he's ever really getting into the pocket. It's just because he can constantly march you down, throw a 1-2, and repeat. So how is he a big star if he's quote-unquote an apex bum and has a boring 1 or 2 style? Well, alright guys, here's the thing. Sean Strickland is absolutely hilarious on the mic and a very solid trash talker, We really saw that leading up to the Izzy fight, and I think that's what really propelled him into stardom, was just how good he is on the mic. And again, no obvious Dana White privilege, so he still has that hardcore fan backing. The other thing I'll note that probably hurts Sean, though, is his right-wing political opinions. When you get political left or right, that's obviously going to alienate you to the other side, and that probably does hurt him as well from getting into that next level that Conor's on. Now, Sean O'Malley. Khabib levels of record padding, but overall he is still a winner. As much of a Sean O'Malley hater I am, I can't deny he generally does have entertaining fights. And he is the haha weed dude, and so that does mean a lot of his fans tend to be on the younger side. That doesn't really matter too much, he still does have a lot of fans, but here's the big issue. He's pretty much the opposite of Sean Strickland. As from what I'm told, he's fairly entertaining on his podcast, but he has no personality in the cage or when he has the mic put in his face, you know? And most people aren't going and listening to Sean O'Malley's podcast. They're only ever going to hear what he says when it's something in the cage. So when he's stuttering and quiet on the mic, guess what? People aren't really going to be super attached to him as a person, which is what you kind of need to be a big star. And so I think that's his big issue. But the other thing is he really, I think, lacks a lot of hardcore fan backing, because I think a lot of people, myself including, see as an industry plant champ, since he only had to get one ranked win to go and fight for the belt, which a lot of people is like, you know, Dana, you just let him kind of get highlights on bums and then got him a robbery decision over Jan before admittedly getting an impressive knockout over Aljamain Sterling. So I think he just lacks a lot of hardcore fan backing as well because of that. So, you know, of the 4 fighters we've gone through so far, Volkanovski is lacking the personality. Derrick Lewis is lacking the skill to get on that high level. Sean Strickland is generally lacking entertaining fights, and Sean O'Malley generally is lacking the backing of the hardcore fans. Now next, the 3 guys who I would argue are bigger stars than all of them have one issue in common. We'll just talk a little bit about each of them, and you should be able to connect the dots. Or probably you can just connect the dots as soon as I say their names. So, Islam Makhachev, an excellent fighter, future GOAT contender, 100%. And entertaining fights, absolutely, again, is Makhachev, Volkanovski 1, Fight of the Year 2023 candidate. You know, despite his broken English, he is still pretty funny. You know, there's the insert shocked face here meme, all that good stuff. And no obvious Dana White privilege, you know, helps as well. He's got hardcore fan backing. At least partially, you know. A lot of people hate him for beating up fan favorites, but he does have a lot of hardcore fan backing in the Middle East and Russia and stuff like that. Alex Pereira, 2-division champ, the fastest 2-division champ ever, in fact. You know, great finishes, Chama, pretty clear Dana White privilege, though. So, you know, again, even though he doesn't speak English, people still generally like him, you know, when he embraces all the Stonehead memes with his son Tony, and his stoic demeanor often is super memed on MMA Twitter and stuff like that. He still does have hardcore fan backing, despite definitely having some Dana White privilege, since most people usually forgive his Dana White privilege because he was a double champ in glory before joining the UFC, even if he did kind of get expedited through the UFC. And finally, we have Charles Oliveira as, of course, you know, former champ. Exciting fights, probably the most exciting fights of anyone on this list. The champion has a name, it's Charles Oliveira. You know, he's gonna trash talk when he wants to trash talk, and no obvious Dana White privilege, so, you know, hardcore fan backing. So now, I'll give you a couple seconds. What do you think is the thing tying these 3 fighters together, Islam Makhachev, Alex Pereira, and Charles Oliveira, from being truly mainstream stars, at least in North America and Western Europe? I'll give you a second. It's the lack of English, okay? You know, America is the largest market. That's where the UFC operates. But, you know, the people in the United States are simply not going to care as much about you if you are not speaking English. And so when none of these guys can really speak English, you know, as much as more hardcore UFC fans love them, they really aren't going to be able to reach out to people on a wider level like Conor did because of that lack of English. So now finally, we're going to go on to who I think is the biggest star in current UFC, and that's gotta be Israel, the dog bender, Adesanya. You know, he's a long-standing champ. He is on a bit of a skid right now, but overall wins most of his fights, obviously. And, you know, he's gonna leave you frozen like Elsa. Basically, what I mean by that is his trash talk, yes, is horrible, but his theatrics are phenomenal. You know, whether that's walking out to the Undertaker theme, or, you know, sniping with the bow and arrow Alex Pereira's corpse after knocking him out in the rematch, whatever it is, his theatrics are phenomenal. But here's the issue. Have all the fancy theatrics you want, if your fights are boring, people simply aren't going to care as much, okay? People tune into an Israel Adesanya fight because they like that he's this chill dude who likes anime and stuff, and they see all these cool theatrics, but I don't think they then really get invested into the UFC on a higher level, or into Izzy at that higher level, because he simply doesn't put on very entertaining fights. And for hardcore fan backing, I think he definitely had that, but I think more recently he's kind of fallen off as he's kind of gotten exposed for being a weirdo after he fought Sean Strickland. Or, well, leading up to his fight with Sean Strickland, I should say. So, yeah, that's what Izzy is lacking. Kind of back to, ironically, Sean Strickland. They're both guys who are entertaining and have a lot of fans for the person, but let's be honest, I don't think anyone's really dying to watch Sean Strickland and Izzy fight. They're dying to see Sean Strickland and Izzy at the press conference and walking out to the fight and on the mic after the fight. But Conor had everything. People were dying to see him at the press conference. People are dying to see his walkout. They're dying to see what he has to say after the fight. You know, he's got his legendary run-up. He's winning his fights. He's getting great finishes. He's going and having great fights. And, you know, he still had a legitimate run-up, you know, so he had a lot of hardcore fan backing to help propel him to that next level. Of course, now he's got hardcore Dana White privilege, but now he's already Conor McGregor, so it doesn't matter. Who cares if you have that privilege? Hardcore fans and casual fans still love you alike because you're Conor McGregor. Basically, as you can see, for all of these guys, they essentially had 3 out of the 4 main criteria. So what do a lot of these guys need to solve, and how likely do I think that is? Volkanovski, I think, is just frankly too nice of a guy, and it'll seem too fake if he suddenly starts to try and trash talk and pump up his personality. And to be honest, I think we could potentially be entering Volkanovski's fall-off era. And in that case, if he starts not winning fights, that's also not going to help. So I don't think Volkanovski's going to be able to get that next level. Derrick Lewis, similar idea. I think he's going to be a bit too old. I don't think we're going to see another Derrick Lewis title run come up or anything, okay? So, you know, if he can just keep doing his thing, knocking out heavyweight bums or whatever, you know, I think we can all cheer on Derrick if that's what he wants to do. I don't know, just book Derrick Lewis and Tai Tuivasa against each other repeatedly until they retire. I think most of us would be happy with that, but again, probably that's not going to get him to that next level if he's just not really able to win that many fights on a high level. Sean Strickland, he could probably become a more entertaining fighter over time, you know, if he takes more risks, get into the pocket a little bit more, and all of that sort of thing, go for a finish a little bit more often, but I think what's going to hold him back is that he is just generally too raunchy and has a lot of the right-wing political opinions, and I think both of those factors do turn a lot of people off. You know, Conor would trash talk, but I don't think he really trash talk in as raunchy of a way as, say, a Sean Strickland does. And again, Makhachev, Pereira, Oliveira, again, they just simply don't speak the language of the UFC's biggest market, and that's always going to hold them back. And chances are they're not going to be able to learn fluent enough English before they've probably gone and retired or started to fall off or anything like that, since, you know, English is actually quite a hard language to learn. Now, finally, Israel Adesanya. Again, I think it's a bit too late for him. He could turn things around and start having a bunch more banger fights because he realizes, okay, I need to turn things around because people are starting to try and turn on me. But I think it's a little bit late for that. I think Izzy, like Volk's, probably in his fall-off arc. And I think after UFC 293, I think he definitely lost a lot of fans for a lot of the weird dog stuff that was coming out, at least among the hardcore community. Obviously, most casuals have no idea about that. So, you'll notice I kind of skipped over one person on my list, and that's Sean O'Malley, because I think Sean O'Malley actually, as much of a hater as I am, has the best shot at becoming, or at least getting closest to Conor McGregor's star power. You know, basically, Sean O'Malley, here's my advice. Go take some public speaking lessons, learn to trash talk a little bit, and actually rack up a couple title defenses while trash talking, and actually learning to speak on a microphone in front of a crowd. I think you could be an even bigger star than you are today. Since, you know, I think a lot of that cuck stuff probably gonna get swept under the rug, you know? Especially, you know, over the last week, it's definitely gotten a little bit overshadowed by the Ian Gary cuck situation. A lot of high-level cucks in the UFC, that's interesting. But aside from that, I do think Sean O'Malley has the best chance at becoming a Conor-level star. But comment down below, out of all these stars I listed, who do you think is the most likely to at least get the closest to the level of stardom that Conor McGregor had/has? Or is there an upcoming prospect you think who will get to Conor's level? Maybe that's Ian Gary. I think now probably not, but I can understand 2 months ago why you might say that. Or whoever else it might be. Comment that down below. And without further ado, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.